You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to the writingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Writing Community Chat Show. We are back in the hot seats, me and Chris Hooley, and we are excited to be here with another wonderful guest for you guys. There's going to be a lot of writing tips, a lot of writing information and stories coming out of our guest tonight. And as mentioned already, spooky season. We're looking forward to that. I'm sure we're going to get some conversations going around that as well. Chris, how has your week been and how are you?
Well, talking about spooky season, mate, I didn't see any of that video play at all. I just watched you for the entire time.
Wow.
Yeah, I knew it was playing because I noticed our guest doing a little movement to the music, but surely that can't happen.
Well, I hope it played for everyone. If you're watching this, let me know if you saw the video. I'm assuming so, but yeah, some spooky technology happening, Chris.
Yeah, but other than that, obviously it is spooky season. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Halloween. Are we doing a Halloween show? Did we decide on that? Or?
We are. I believe. What's the date today? It's next Friday. So we haven't announced any sort of specifics yet. We don't quite know what we're going to do for it. We love suggestions to come in. We classically dress up for a Halloween show, Chris. Not thought once about outfits or designs this year. So it's really last minute for us. But yes, we are planning a Halloween show next week.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. How's your week been, Agate? What have you been up to?
Yeah, it's been good. I got some chapter 6 of my latest book released on Substack on Monday. That went down well with a few that read it. And I'm looking forward to that because I only just kind of but realized there's only 10 chapters in that book. It's a novella like my others, but the last chapter is very short. It's almost like a summary or an ending. So there's only a couple left for me to publish on Substack and it'll be finished. And I'm really intrigued to see what people think of it. There's a couple of bits of feedback already that I'm going to incorporate in the book that have been good ideas, some of which I have thought of already. So yeah, I'm working on that at the moment and, busy with normal work as well and trying to get back on the fitness wagon. So kind of busy at the moment, but in a good way.
Yeah, definitely spinning all the plates there, but that's positive.
It certainly is, yeah. Have you been up to anything exciting?
Oh, mate, I'd hardly say it was. Do you know what happened to me this morning, which was really disappointing? So my alarm went off and I thought, why is my alarm going off on a Saturday? And then I looked at my phone and realized it was Friday. And I was like, oh, God.
There is nothing worse than thinking you're a day ahead. Yeah, hate that. It's horrible. So I think I'm really looking forward to the Halloween show. We figure out what that will be. I watched a pretty rubbish film this week, The Terrifier. Have you seen that, Chris?
No, I've heard a lot of hype about it, though. A lot of people want to see it. So,
well, there's the new one, A Terrifier 3 out. So I thought they got 3 films. It's a horror film that people like. I love horror, and I watched it, and it was just pure gore. There was no sort of suspense or storyline in there that I was really sucked into. So for me, I'll give it a pass on the next 2. But it's the time to watch horror, so I gave that a go.
I heard that was mainly the shock factor and the sort of, handing out the gore, so to speak, and can you throw up in the cinema? Yeah, I miss the old days I used to work in the cinema when Paranormal Activity came out, the first one. And people passing out in the cinema was just brilliant. Like, not for them, obviously, but for me watching it, because I could kind of I used to play. Well, it wasn't just me. Disclaimer: we all used to play a game when people were coming in buying the tickets of who was going to pass out, and it's never the people you expect. So Yeah.
It always fascinated me. It used to talk about, The Exorcist back in the day and people being sick and passing out. And I always thought, I don't think I've seen someone pass out in the cinema. Don't understand why. But clearly you're confirming that does happen.
Yeah, I think it's that built-up anxiety where it gets too much and people just, boom, the sort of system shuts down, so to speak. Everyone was okay every single time. But yeah, I think they hyperventilate and creates that sort of feeling of passing out. So
yeah. Anya says Paranormal Activity was wonderfully spooky. The first one definitely was. And hello to you, Anya and Anna, who are in the chat right now. Hope you've had a good week. Let us know how you're doing. And she also said, I love ghosts and paranormal types of spooky films. Gore is meh. I agree. Shock factor, for the sake of it, doesn't make a good story. So there needs to be a balance in there, I think. Like my latest book. Check it out on Substack. Okay. So what we're going to do is bring on our guest tonight, who I think is going to have quite a lot of advice and tips that we can take, especially if you're writing in the YA world or writing for a younger audience, which a lot of people might dabble with that or solely do that. So I think this will be very valuable to those people, but also a lot of tips are universal. So I think taking advice from this author can be very good to us. And I'm sure we will do that. So tonight's guest, once I find that, is a true creative force, an author whose work has touched the lives of children and teens through stories that inspire empathy, compassion, and resilience. Annie's writing journey began when she was just a child, discovering the magic of storytelling through a diary, and it led to her first published book, People Are Like Lollipops, written while she was still in college. Now, with over 13 books to her name, including her latest YA novel, The Little Things That Kill, right above Chris's head, Annie continues to empower young readers with stories that reflect the real challenges and emotions they face. We'll be talking to her about her journey as a writer, what motivates her storytelling, and we'll even get a sneak peek into her next novel, Leeta Simtar, I hope I said that right, A Life on Two Planets, which is coming in 2025. So grab a seat, get comfy, and please help me welcome the wonderful Annie Fox. Hello, Annie.
Hi there, guys. Thanks for having me.
You are very, very welcome. How is Annie?
Annie's doing well. It's Friday noon here, and the sun is shining here in Northern California. So, and the pumpkins are popping.
Popping pumpkins and sunshine. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
We were briefly talking before you came on about spooky season and Halloween, and I was expressing my jealousy of America and the spooky season there. So, what's it like? Generally, is there a lot of excitement? Is there a lot of people kind of gathering together, like family gatherings, or is it kind of everyone's out in the streets enjoying themselves?
That's what happens on the night of Halloween, but pretty much for the whole month of October, people are getting ready. They are decorating their front yards and their homes. We see all kinds of displays. There are, like the idea of a witch that has flown into a tree. You see that in some neighborhoods. Skeletal hands coming up from the garden. People really get into it, and it's really fun just to kind of walk around the neighborhoods and see what's going on. And that's, as I say, that's even without the people walking around in the costumes, which is just a moving feast for the eyes.
Yeah, I bet it is. My wife's terrified of people in costumes, so I don't think she'll enjoy that too much.
Okay, don't bring her here.
Yeah, I don't think I will. Okay, so where in the world are you right now?
I am across the Golden Gate Bridge, north of San Francisco.
Lovely. And I always ask this question because I am not very well traveled, but I like to be nosy about what happens in these places. So where you are, is there much of a writers network or a scene where you can kind of meet up with writers, or do you do that at all?
Oh, I'm not a joiner, to tell you the truth. It's just me and my characters in my head for as long as it takes for me to get their story. But I will tell you that this book started as a NaNoWriMo project. You guys know about NaNoWriMo?
I do, yeah.
Sure. So every November, for your listeners who don't know, it's called National Novel Writing Month. And every November, you are given a challenge to write 50,000 words of a brand new novel that has just popped into your head, maybe, and see if you could do that in the 30 days. And what I was aware of, back to your question about community, is that you can track your progress day by day to see how many words you've accrued. And then you get to see how many other people in your county or, in the Bay Area or in all of California are also along on the journey. And there was something very, very nice about that.
I didn't realize NaNoWriMo did that, because I've done that before, but I never noticed the community aspect of it in that sense.
Yeah, you can,
Yeah.
turn that on, and I found it motivating.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. What we're going to do then, we're going to play a very quick little trailer for part 1 of the show, which is the road to writing. And then when we come back, it's literally seconds, it's not long. We're going to talk to you about how you got to where
It's a very short road to writing.
Yes, a very short. But we're going to talk about your kind of journey to where you are now in the writing sense. And yeah, we'll play this little trailer. Did you see that video, Chris?
I saw part of
it. You've definitely got yours broken. Okay, Annie, take us back then. Writing obviously has been something that you've been part of in your life since you were quite young. Do you remember what the first spark of inspiration was for you and why you started that journey?
Well, as you mentioned, I was gifted a diary when I was in the 4th grade, which would make me about 9 years old at the time. And the blank pages kind of spoke to me. It's the idea of someone gave me an opportunity to write a book. And I had this kind of quirky thing. Once I started writing on the blank pages, I would read them back to myself as if someone else had written them.
Okay.
And well, my 9-year-old brain said, this is quite good. Not only did I like the feeling, I loved taking the point of view of a future reader. That was a little bit schizophrenic, I'm not sure. But the actual road to professional writing happened for me when I was working as a library page, that is someone who's paid to shelve books in a public library, in the children's section. I spent a summer doing that while I was an undergraduate in college. And of course, I was reading a lot of the books that I was shelving and thinking that they weren't very compelling for the most part. And well, they got their book published. So one night I went home with some colored pencils and a pad of paper, and I wrote a story and illustrated. And the next day I brought it into my supervisor and showed it to her. And the fates must have been watching me at the time, because she currently at that moment had a visitor who was an editor of a New York publishing house who was visiting her. And she showed my pad with the story and the drawings on it. And they offered me a contract to get my book published. And it was very amazing. And I was not legally old enough at the time to sign the contract. So I had to bring it home for my mom to sign.
What do you remember what your mom said at the time?
Well, she knew about it in advance, but she did say, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. And so I thought, how wonderful. And then the royalty checks, first the box of books came to my college dorm about 6 months later, and I was thrilled. And then the royalty checks started coming in, and I was even more thrilled. And I thought, oh, wow. It took me 20 minutes to write and draw this, and I'm getting residuals on and on and on. This could be a thing.
Yeah. Did you have any expectation that the book would do well at that stage?
No. I was just, it took so little effort that I just thought if I really applied myself, I could write something great.
Yeah.
And so I kept at that, got lots of rejections with children's books, and then thought, okay, well, maybe there's another way that I could create content for kids. And my solution to that was to create a website that was going to be for teenagers. It's called theinsight.org. And I wrote and designed the whole thing and essentially set up an agony aunt on it, an advice giver. And all this email started coming in. And pretty much everything since that, and that was in June of 1997, I was getting email from teenagers from all over the world. Never advertised it. It was like this underground thing. Annie Fox knows how to give advice. And so all the other books after that were based on these emails, what I was learning about what it was like to be a teenager for them in the 21st century. And listening to how they spoke so that I could write dialogue. And yeah, I've answered over 60,000 emails.
Wow.
Wow.
I was going to
That's
ask,
insane.
yeah, I was going to ask that obviously the information that you were getting from these people with the agony aunt, were you going to use it in your work? And you just said that you did.
I used it to inform stories and
Yeah.
plot lines. I never, and even when I posted some of the emails, I always stripped out all the identifiers because I wanted the site to also be helpful to other kids. So if
Yeah.
they were too shy to ask me the question, they could take a look at the directory and say, oh, here's a whole folder of emails about problems with parents. Like that.
So was that an effective way of building your audience at the same time?
It's not something I thought about, but yeah, I guess so. Because other books I needed to survey teens about their attitudes and opinions about things. I wrote a book called Too Stressed to Think, and I really wanted to know what stressed out kids and how that could be quantified. The most stressful thing about being a teenager in this day and age is, and they would get, so I had a database of teenagers that I could turn to for those kind of empirical facts.
Yeah. It's really impressive to do it that way, I think. Chris, have you got a question there?
Annie, yeah, Annie, I've got a question about pressure. So did having some success with your first attempt at a children's book, obviously, like you said, you did it in 20 minutes, you got a contract, the residuals came in. Did that add a pressure to anything that you wrote after that? And also, once you set up the website and you were getting inundated with emails, did that pressure, how did you manage that pressure? So I suppose my question is twofold. How did you manage the pressure in both of those scenarios?
Okay, well, the first question, it wasn't pressure as much as it was overconfidence. I thought, oh, this was so easy. I could just knock out a book, every week. But there was some kind of a kismet involved in the publication of that first book. And I couldn't duplicate it in the same way, though I kept trying. And then I went to screenplay writing, and that is a whole other thing. Whoa, if you want to have an exercise in total futility, try and sell a screenplay.
Yeah,
but
on that journey currently. Yeah, I know what you mean.
No, and I wrote 6 or 7 of them, and I learned a lot about how to plot things out, and I became great at writing dialogue, which is always very useful when you're writing fiction. But yeah, so as far as the pressure of answering the emails, luckily I type very quickly. And I just felt very responsible to these kids who actually took a leap of faith to write to me. And my mantra to myself was never make them wait more than 24 hours for an answer. And
I'm guessing
how
that
did
was
you
also...
manage?
How did I manage to
Sorry,
do that?
Chris.
Go.
No, I was going to say, how did you manage to absorb all of that, like you say, 20 odd plus years of teenage angst? Because that'd be quite difficult to take in and not let it impact you in some way.
Well, it impacts me when I'm reading the email. It impacts me when I'm responding, because I think that's the only way that you can truly be empathetic and compassionate is you really get in there and feel what they're feeling. But I didn't carry it around with me. And I also realized I had only one shot realistically. I'm not a therapist. This wasn't going to be an ongoing relationship. I had one shot to answer this kid's question and give them some solid advice so they could take the next step in making whatever challenge they were dealing with better. And it was usually a communication thing. So I would say, okay, I hear what you're saying. That sounds really difficult. You might want to try saying something like this. And so I'd have 2 or 3 sentences, and good luck. Let me know how it goes. 99% of the time, I never heard from them again, but occasionally I would. And sometimes like 10 or 20 years later, I would hear from them saying, "You
Wow.
probably don't remember me. I signed my letter confused."
Mm.
Like everybody signed their letter fictitiously confused. But then they'd say, "I just wanted to thank you, Annie, because at that time in my life, my parents had just gotten divorced, and I needed someone to listen, and you did, and just thank you." And so, yeah,
That's
pretty sweet.
brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I
nice.
was going to say that it must be something natural in your personality to get to those emails and answer so many of them as well.
No, I'm a really mean bitch. This is an act. Woo!
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. No, so yeah, I think you obviously had a lot of information that you could utilize then for your stories going forward, but were there any sort of challenges that you did face on the page or as writing that you kind of developed over the time of your writing career that you adapted and kind of solved, and now you look back on as and that was a lesson you learned, sort of thing?
Some really good advice an editor gave me once, someone that I hired as an editor. She said, "Know your characters so well that at any moment in time when they are acting or reacting, that you can embody them with the most Annie thing, not Annie. I suppose Annie is the character, the most Chris thing that this character can do." So, Cassie, who's one of my characters in The Little Things That Kill. I know her so well that, yeah, someone says this to Cassie, she's going to respond this way. But what is the most Cassie way that she could respond? And I thought that's really good advice. That used to be a problem for me, but after getting that advice and doing like 17 revisions of The Little Things That Kill, it just became, okay, now I get it. I get it. Don't hold back.
Does that basically mean that the character that you're writing will become more apparent as an individual?
Yes. You let your characters tell you the kind of story they want you to tell and the way they want it told. It's as if you are following them around with a video camera and you're following them wherever they go. And maybe there is a crossroads that they come to, and your natural inclination is to go to the right, but your character is pulling you to the left, where there may be a dark forest or a cliff or a monster. I'm just being metaphorical here. And you go, "You sure you want to go there?" And Cassie says, "Yeah, that's where we're going." And you have to trust the characters enough, which sounds crazy because they're your creation, but you have to trust them enough. And what's the worst thing that happen? You go down to the left and, you bonk into a tree and there's no story there. Okay, so you backtrack and you get to the crossroads again. But often I find that interesting things happen that when I first sat down for that writing session that day to write that scene, I did not know what was going to happen. That's
So
magic.
I take it from that piece of information that you're a pantser.
Yeah, after the fact. I started The Little Things That Kill in 2013, and it wasn't published till 2023.
Oh.
And that was all pantsing. So when I finally, when COVID hit and I realized I got to get this damn thing done or it will never get done, I became a plotter. And with my new book, which is a sci-fi YA novel, the little Leeta Simtar, I will not do the pantser thing again. I mean, maybe in little scenes, sure, but I know where I'm going.
And I suppose my question is, obviously you're writing YA fiction and you've been in and around sort of teenage problems since 1997. Have you noticed any massive changes in the psyche of the sort of collective teenager? And how has that impacted your writing?
That's a really good question. I also was a teenager and I raised two teenagers, but the developmentally, no, there's no difference. It's a really awkward in between kind of phase of between childhood and adulthood. And the only major difference is that things are happening quicker for them. And because of social media, they are more connected 24/7, I'd say, with their peer group. So they don't have the opportunities that I know I did, and I'm not sure if you guys did, to just take a walk and not have your peer group in your back pocket, pulling you back into whatever social drama is going on, demanding your attention, demanding your input, demanding your loyalty. None of that stuff happened when I was growing up, thank goodness, because my own thoughts had a place to grow, and my imagination. I wasn't, look, if you're working and every 2 seconds someone's going ding, ding, because they want something from you, you can't concentrate. You can't. And if those interruptions are then social pressure to do something, feel something, react in some way, it's really hard for them to be them. I have so much compassion for 21st century teenagers. And so when my writing is reflecting who they are today, that has to be part of it. Everything's amped up. It's sad.
It is sad. And I really think that a question I think many teenagers wouldn't be able to answer now is if we asked them, would you be able to go for a nice half an hour walk and leave your phone in the house? I think 99.9% of those people would say they can't go without the phone.
And do you know why? I do. It's because their social currency is tied up with their participation with the group. They will solicit a very hostile response if they don't respond to a text immediately. It's a sign of bad friendship. What are you? Just because you can respond instantly, we all expect we should get a response instantly. Now, those of us who are adults, we have a more fully formed frontal lobe here, and we can put things off for a while. But until a young person is in their mid-20s, so the research now tells us, they don't have the ability to defer. They don't have the ability to plan ahead, and they don't have an ability to temper their instincts when it comes to immediate responses. And so they are volatile and unpredictable, and they need instant gratification. And the phone offers a lot of those opportunities, and it doesn't play to our higher angels.
So how do you think that reflects with reading now? Do you think that's going to change how readers grow up now? Do you think they'll be able to sit and have the attention to read a book?
An actual book?
Yeah.
With pages? I don't know what the publishing statistics on this are. My thought is probably that people are maybe listening to audiobooks more than they're buying books, but I really don't know the answer to that. But yeah, you need a quiet mind to read a book.
With that in mind, Annie, and like you said, that need for instant gratification and competing with social media as a form of entertainment, how does that change your approach as a writer then, when you're writing for this very specific target audience?
Here's another good piece of advice. Write the book you want to read. I'm not competing with anything. I'm an artist. I'm an artist who's putting out, my creative expression, and it will find an audience. I think if you're trying to do something other than that, you're fooling yourself. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Too many flashing things moving around. You're just words on a page.
Yeah, I get that. And obviously I agree. But are there any writing tips and tricks of the trade, I suppose, that you could implement or look to implement into your writing? Because you said the first time, obviously, you were a pantser and obviously by your reaction and what you said, that didn't go too well for you.
Took too long.
So this time around, you being a bit of a planner.
Mm-hmm.
So are there little things or bits of advice that you could give to somebody writing for like an audience? And I know obviously we can't put it in a box. A lot of YA books, like, you know, I read by adults and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
It's a bit of a loaded question, but
No,
is there any advice
no,
you could give?
it's a really good question. I think because of the attention span that is getting shorter and shorter, that you need to be compelling in your first sentence, first paragraph at least. Nobody wants to waste time with a book that unfolds too slowly. Some people might, but like you say, I'm writing for young adults. And so they're used to things moving along. Films that used to, I mean, films are dated when you look at them and they go, wow, nothing's happening in this scene. Why didn't someone just edit this and move along? So that idea of moving along is one of the tips that I would definitely advice. But the other thing is, at the end of each chapter, you need to have that, okay, this happened, but then, and then, okay, well, I don't know what happens, but then, and flip the page. And so there is that that awareness as a writer that you don't have forever, and that your story should be meaty enough and compelling enough that it moves along. And you have to know that. I've read books that I greatly, greatly admire, is beautifully written, but ho hum, you know, and I'm a pretty patient person, and I will forgive a lot with good writing, but it's like, okay, does this really need to be 400 pages?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm quite interested, before we go on to part 2, about your illustrations. You've got some beautiful pictures hanging up to your left
Oh,
side.
thanks.
Yeah, how do you decide when it comes to illustration what's fitting for the book and what's not?
These illustrations are mine, but they're not in my books. I paint and draw, but yeah, I'm not an illustrator, and I did not do the beautiful cover of The Little Things That Kill.
Yeah.
That said, I art directed it. And the same is true for the new cover that we're working on for Leeta Simtar. I have an undergraduate degree in art history, and so art is very important to me on a whole lot of levels. But as a storyteller, especially for cover art, you know, when you see a great cover, you just want to like dive in. It's like your storefront. Let me in there. What is this story? And sometimes the cover doesn't do the story justice. Sometimes the cover is better than the story inside. But when it's great, it's like, yes, this is a perfect match. Someone, probably the author, knew how to communicate his or her vision to the cover illustrator. And yeah, that's perfect.
I also hear you're a keen baker.
Oh, yes. I wish I could give you some virtual muffins. Yeah, I just bake. I do sourdough, which is a big thing here in San Francisco, but also banana chocolate chip muffins, pumpkin cranberry muffins. I pancakes. Yeah, I really like to make pancakes. All from scratch, of course.
Nice.
Yeah, baking. You know, it's interesting when you're talking about pantser or plotter. Baking is plotting. I mean, you're following directions. And sometimes when you're kind of stuck in a scene like I was yesterday, it's like, this is really tricky. The dynamic between these two characters. To take a break and follow someone's recipe is really an antidote to just sitting there in this kind of ether. It's so abstract. What is it she's trying to say? What doesn't she need to say? What should she get to more quickly? What is the thing they're not saying? But one character knows it and the other doesn't. And so all of that is like, so I either go take a walk with the dog or I bake.
Yeah. Nice.
You need balance. Writers
Annie,
need
I've
balance.
got another question that's sort of linked around creativity. Like, is there a different feeling that you get when you know you want to draw something or paint something than there is when you want to write something, like at a visceral level?
Yeah. You ask really good questions. It's the need to express, but it's a chosen platform, right? Drawing and painting for me it's problem solving, but it's mostly nonverbal. So I can put music on and I can create something, yeah, I can create stuff. I cannot listen to music and write. And the other difference is that the drawing and painting is for me. The writing is for my readers. So that's different. And maybe that allows me some freedom and flexibility of what I choose to put on a piece of paper visually versus story. Story is very personal. It's, even though I'm not writing nonfiction, people who read books written by authors they know very well can recognize parts of the author in characters and in the way, in like Leeta Simtar, for example. She's a visitor from another planet, and she's a botanist. I'm an avid gardener. So and she comes from a planet that's pretty arid. So for her to see Earth in full bloom in spring, with water flowing and flowers, it's pretty wonderful. And I remember in the spring looking at the world as it was opening up from the winter, looking at it through Leeta's eyes, knowing that I wanted to bring that surprise into my writing. So anyone who knows me will know that I will stop when I see a hydrangea and go, whoa, look at that. And I'm taking photographs of it. So yeah, it's personal. And so when it gets rejected, there's this kind of, I guess, an ego hit that might happen. We like the story okay, but man, all that stuff about nature, forget it. And I'm like, oh.
Do you know there's
Yeah.
I was going for a walk a few weeks ago, and I was listening to like a walking meditation, and a lot of that was talking about slow down, have a look around you at the environment around you.
Yeah.
And I realized at that point is there's a lot of beautiful nature around it, and you're moving so fast through life, you often don't appreciate it or look at it properly.
Yeah.
And that kind of what you just said kind of gave me that vision of actually slowing down and looking at it through someone else's eyes, maybe trying to see it for the first time. And I think it's really a good tip to do, especially that we talk about writer's block. And one of the ways we like to get over that is to go out for a walk and get your mind working.
Yeah.
And maybe go and do that and just actually look outside your doorstep at the nature around you. And that can really change your vision on that, I think.
It will definitely calm you down because nature is a natural de-stressor. But back to Chris's question of, do I have a different feeling depending on which way I'm choosing to express myself creatively? Yeah, I have a different spark. It's like I feel like painting right now. I need a break from the writing because I'm on a deadline for the writing. The new book is coming out in March, and a lot needs to be done before that publication date, obviously. And so it can be very intense. And so I will choose to do that. But I also play the piano. And sometimes that is a different kind of choice. It's like, okay, I'm going to sit down and, play.
Awesome. What we're going to do is we're going to move on to part 2, which is what's the story? And when we come back, hopefully, Annie, you can tell everybody all about the little things that kill.
Okay.
Here it comes. So, Annie, let us know what the little things that kill is all about, please.
Okay. In a nutshell, it's a teen friendship afterlife apology tour. It's a paranormal mystery. On page 1, we find out that our protagonist, Nicole, is dead. She literally wakes up and finds herself in this otherworldly realm called Substation 15. She has no memory of how she could possibly be dead. And she's given 30 days to figure it out. At the end of the 30 days, there's this test called the evaluation. And if she doesn't piece together the mystery of what happened to her so she can meet the requirements of the evaluation, which is essentially taking responsibility for the choices that brought you to this moment of your death, then she's not moving on. She has no clue what it means to move on. They're a little fuzzy. Oh, they are the people who run Substation 15. They are called the mentors. And she doesn't know what moving on is. They're really sketchy when it comes to details. But she has a very active imagination. I call her a drama queen on stage and off. She's got big emotions, this girl does. And so she figures out that since she can't remember, the only way that she can pass the evaluation is by going back to Earth. She's a spirit, so no one could see her. I mean, it's not like she's got a body and going back to Earth. She's on a fact-finding tour, and she starts at her own funeral, hoping that someone can remember more than she can, which she can remember zero.
Yeah.
But then she has it's a cool premise. Then the challenge for her is, how does she communicate? She can observe and she can hear, but she's got questions. So she has to figure out how she can communicate with the people she left behind. And as I mentioned to you before we started, one of her best friends is a practicing witch. And so she can connect with her on some level and get some answers.
Yeah, it is a fascinating concept. I'm really kind of intrigued that how you described that and how you kind of came up with the idea for that, and not just the idea in general, but the memory loss aspect. Why did you where did that spark come from to create that?
The spark for the story came from a New York Times article that a cousin of mine sent me via an email, because he knew that, I do this kind of work with teenagers, and it was a story about a very young girl who had taken her own life. And part of that's tragic, obviously.
Yeah.
But the intriguing part about it was, first of all, what brought her to that point. But the other thing that was mentioned in the story was a Facebook memorial page that one of her so-called friends posted to, the girl's memorial page, where she said something extraordinarily cruel about the dead girl. And it just blew me away. It's like, okay, sometimes someone dies, you know them, and you're not all that sad about it. But to publicly deface her memorial page in such a disgusting, ruthless way, I'm like, okay, this is an interesting character. But I couldn't find any answers. And so I made them up. And I thought the idea of my dead girl not remembering and having to rely on some people who are not necessarily friendly towards her for information, people who may have had something to hide if they were being interrogated, all of that stuff made for a very rich plot for me. So my story has 3 first-person narrators, and none of them are reliable, including my dead girl, who has giant holes in her memory.
Annie, one of the things that people will say about writing anything that's paranormal or outside of the sort of the known is the complications that come with it, in terms of like, how does the character do that? Are they levitating? They're invisible, but what's the world like? What is like the afterlife sort of experience like, and how are you capturing that? So what advice would you give to somebody based on your own experience if they were looking to do something similar?
Well, no one's going to prove you wrong. So there's a lot of freedom there, So I created this Substation 15. Here, I don't know if it's going to show up. I'll put this here. This is a map. This is the map of the afterlife where my character ends up.
I love that.
It's like a campus. Okay. And so, like I said, no one can prove me wrong. It's fiction, So, there is that escape hatch. But here's some other advice that I got, which I passed on, that everything in your world building needs to exist for a reason. Don't put it there if it doesn't support the story. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can kind of reverse engineer in that way. We need a place that is all about higher learning, so to speak. It's a campus. It's an opportunity to reflect on the choices you made during life, because that's what's going to happen in the evaluation. There are also skills that you might need if you're going to go back to Earth as what we call no body. She's a no body. Levitation, telekinesis is one of them. Do you guys see the movie Ghost from years ago with Patrick Swayze? Yeah. Okay. Took him a long time to learn to levitate, but it was, excuse me, to do telekinesis. But when he moved that penny, that was like super cool. Okay. So that's a useful thing. And so I placed a tutorial on Substation 15 where Nicole could learn telekinesis. And then later in the story, she uses it to communicate with someone in the form of writing. Okay.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So make sure in your world building that everything you put in there serves a purpose. It's really, really important. And I've read books about dead characters. I forget the name of it, but anyway, I didn't like it because it felt like there was no reason. Part of it takes place in heaven, but she's mostly kind of like sitting on the edge of the cloud, looking down at Earth, watching the goings on of her family. And I thought, well, why is she even there? The writer didn't give us any there, and it made no sense. Why does she have to go back and forth when she could? What she was trying to find out is on Earth. So there was no preparation for her up above, and there was no reason for her to return. There was never any reason for that place to exist, and it pissed me off.
Yeah, I like that.
With big themes such as, like, obviously you've alluded to suicide with the article that you referenced.
Yes.
And obviously you've got, like, I can still see it now, even though I can't see the whole title. Kill is massive on the front. And two of the things that I heard recently was, like, a title can be like the first introduction to a book that can be a trigger warning or an off-putting thing. So I suppose my question in this is, why did you try and tackle these big issues? And then how did the title come about, and how did you decide to embrace that?
The title is about the choices we make. The choices we make wittingly or unwittingly. Those little tiny choices we make, thousands of them every day, that impact other people and ourselves ultimately. It makes us who we are. We are an accumulation of the choices we make. And again, I guess this goes back to all those thousands of emails. That was what kept coming up from these email writers constantly. I still get the email. So it's I did this and now this happened. What can I do to fix it? That's essentially 60,000 emails all boiled down. And so I thought, okay, some things you can undo. Some things, you put your foot in it, as we say here, you step in it and you own it, and there's no going back. I wasn't thinking particularly as something as dramatic as taking your own life, but that is probably the ultimate thing. But sometimes people just don't forgive you, and you've wrecked a relationship by something thoughtless you did or intentional that you did in the heat of the moment. So I think that part of what this title is really about is that it's lots of little things. And it was a play on, like, it's the little things that count. You've all heard that expression. So it's the little things that kill. So be mindful of the choices we make when we speak, when we post, when we text. It matters.
Absolutely. That's a really nice way to explain the title. I think that's really cool. It's almost like the butterfly effect. You know,
we're all connected.
mm,
And I think Nicole's story is about that. Even when people saying, I don't care, she's dead, I don't care, had nothing to do with me. Let's dig a little deeper.
yeah, amazing. Anya says sounds like such a fun book, so she's definitely into that. And she also said, "Woohoo, art historian here." So yeah, a bit of a fan there. What we're going to do is we're going to move on to part 3, which is the community question time. If you've got questions for Annie, please send them in. What we're going to do is we're going to ask our staple questions and see where we go with that. So part 3 is coming right up after this little video. So, Annie, if you could take a character from the world of fiction and put one of that character into one of your books, which character would you choose and why?
Elphaba. Elphaba from Gregory Maguire's Wicked. First of all, brilliant book, and I'm a major fan of the musical, which is coming out in film form on Thanksgiving Day. Here, I'm so excited.
Wow.
Okay, but if you haven't read the book, the novel is the most brilliant discussion, exploration of good versus evil that I've ever read, and all about popularity too, and what it means to what you can get away with when you're popular, and what you can't when you're not. So yeah, Elphaba, I think she would be really fun to reprise in a different setting and see what she comes up with.
Do you know which book of yours you would put her into?
Oh yes. There's a third novel I'm going to be doing after I finish Leeta Simtar, and I think I would put her in that one. Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, that's a good idea. Thank you.
So another staple question that we have is a bit morbid, but obviously we've been talking about death and paranormal experiences anyway, so it's okay. But you're on your deathbed and you're looking back at your writing career. What would you be happy with? What is success to you?
Only in reference to my writing career, or success as I define it in life?
Both.
Okay, well, my life is already successful, but and by that I define it as that I have had the freedom and the confidence to express myself openly and honestly. I've had those opportunities. I've created those opportunities for myself on an ongoing basis. I've got an amazing family, and I've got kids and a couple of grandkids, and very close relationships with them. And so the stuff that I always want for my characters in terms of connections, I have created that and worked on it really hard with my husband and myself. So that's success, man. On your deathbed, you're not going to say, gee, I wish I'd sold more books, or gee, I wish I had more money in the bank, or, better tomatoes coming out of my garden. I mean, it's like, come on. What's it about?
Can I ask you?
You can
ask you a question that we seem to be asking. Yeah, we seem to be asking this a lot recently, but because I did an article like a month ago now, where I suddenly realized I didn't have that many friends. And I've ever since I've asked everyone that we've had on the show, how many friends do you have? Just because I've got a theory that it's not as many as what we think. But you could prove me wrong with this, but other guests have said
okay.
I don't want to say anything, but yeah, how many friends have you got?
Real friends. I actually have a book that I wrote for middle school students called Real Friends versus the Other Kind. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about real friends. Aside from my immediate family, who I am lucky enough to say these people are my friends. I've got one friend. One friend that I would be unashamed to come to her with any problem, any reason to celebrate. I know that she will support me and be happy for me or grieve with me, and I wouldn't have to be embarrassed about any worry that I say, oh, I'm feeling kind of embarrassed, but I'm actually worried about this. And okay, one. The answer is one. Is that a lot or a little?
No, that roughly corresponds to what everybody else has said, in recent times. But I think that we all think we should have loads of friends, and we feel bad if we don't. I think, that's sort of like most of us are confident enough to be able to go, I've got one really good friend, and that's great. But I think the sort of collective pressure is, oh, you've only got a handful of friends, or you've only got a couple of friends. Like that. That's a bit sad.
I guess it
But
depends on
in reality,
how do you define a friend? I mean, I'm very friendly, and I'm friendly with lots of people, and I know lots of people that know me, and I go, "Hi, how's it going?" But that's by my definition.
I think you nailed it, Annie, when you said true friends when we asked the question at the start. We knew exactly what you meant when you said that, and then we knew your answer would be very similar in that sense.
Yeah. Same for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think we've made a point where we said, like, one friend like that is better than, having 100+ acquaintances, or even the 100+ people where you just nip round to their house or whatever. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I don't know why I keep asking this question, but it feels important.
It's important, I think, for people to think about what they mean when they say friend. And I think it's, I mean, what is it on Facebook? It's like, how many friends do you have? I think it's a misnomer.
Absolutely.
So people can, like the photo that you post.
Yeah. We're pushing on for time. So what I'm going to do, I've got a question from Anya, which we'll read that out now. Because Annie at the end is going to read us out with a bit of his story, which is really exciting. So I'll ask this question, then we'll find out some information about where we can get books and stuff, and then we can get the reading on. So Anya says, do you believe in magic or magical entities? In full disclosure, I allow room for such belief myself, even though I cannot prove they exist.
I would define magic as something that cannot be explained. And yes, I believe in magic. I think there's magic everywhere. I find it's magic if I'm walking and I take a turn and I look down and there's a penny on the street. And it's like magic to me. I know I'm very, my mom once described me as a happy little thing. I just like, it doesn't take much for me to just believe in magic. Now, magic spells and making things happen. I definitely believe in affirmations, Anya. I think that we can open ourselves to the universe and kind of just let the universe know what we're looking for. And we'll see what happens. Right now, I am hoping the universe responds to America's need to protect our democracy. But that's another story.
Yeah. Absolutely. She says, I like that definition. So thank you for that. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
So Annie, where can we find the little things that kill, and where can people find more information about you?
AnnieFox.com is where you can find out a lot of stuff about me, even how many children's books I have in my library, or magic rocks that I've picked up on beaches around the world. You can find out about the 13 books that I've read. There are audio clips of this book that I'm about to read from not me. We've got a great audio narrator. Yeah. You can even see some of my photographs and artwork if you want to. It's all there at AnnieFox.com. As far as where you can buy my book, any place where you buy books. It's in print, ebook, paperback, hardcover, and audio book. You could also do that on my website. If you buy it from me, I'll inscribe it. Yeah.
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah.
Brilliant. just want to say then, before you read us out, is thank you so much for sharing your story with us. You're a fantastic guest, and you're a great character, and very talented character with lots of skills. But yeah, really thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you from me, and yeah, hope you have a great Halloween. It sounds amazing. I wish I was there to soak in the American Halloween vibe.
Oh, maybe I'll take some photos from our neighborhood and I'll send it to you guys.
Yeah, please do. Chris, anything from you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be a collective voice again and to speak for all the teenagers that you've helped over the years. I think it's a wonderful thing that you've responded to so many people. You've been a wonderful guest tonight, and it's been a pleasure chatting to you.
Thank you both very much. Really appreciate your thoughtful questions and giving me the opportunity to be here.
You're very welcome. Okay, take us out. Give us your reading, please.
Can I set it up a little bit? What I'm going to read?
Yeah. Do whatever you fancy.
Okay, so this is an early chapter in The Little Things That Kill, and it's from the point of view of Isabel, the witchy friend of our dead girl, and she's first finding out through her Ouija board that something has maybe happened to her friend. She hasn't spoken to her for a day. They had a fight. And her friend is no longer responding to her texts. So this is Isabel finding out what's going on here. An otherworldly howl from out in the hallway makes me drop the phone. The pitiful wail sounds like a dog locked out in a storm. Or a ghost. There's only one thing I know for certain at this moment. We don't have a dog. I put my ear against the door. The howling becomes a moan. It's a spirit, a very troubled one. I should help it. No, I should not open the door. What am I thinking? Spirits can pass through doors. Maybe if I cast a protection spell, I can block it. I run to the shelf and grab my book of spells. I'm flipping pages, but I'm freaking out and it's hard to read. From out in the hallway, a familiar voice cries, Isabel! It's Mom. Is the spirit hurting her? I yank open the door. Mom sits alone on the floor, slumped against the banister. My stomach free falls. Mom, are you all right? She looks up, her face twisted in agony. She reaches for me, her hand cold and sweaty. As she pulls me down beside her, she squeezes my fingers so hard it hurts. Mom, what's wrong? She looks away. After a moment, she inhales sharply, turns back, and gently rests a hand on the side of my face. Sweetheart, I have some very sad news. I know what it is. Don't tell me. I don't want to hear it. I can't hear it. She swallows hard, eyes streaming. Nicole is dead.
Ooh, that's good. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you all very soon. Bye.
Bye.
And we are done.